welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Fourth Wall. I'm 𝗕𝗃𝗀𝗄𝗏.
I'm 𝗕𝗲𝗆𝗃.
And we are the co-artistic directors of Fourth Wall Theater Company. And tonight we have a very special guest with us, someone very near and dear to our hearts for many reasons, but not the least being that he was in the very first show of Stark Naked Theater Company, Mr. David Rainey, the artistic director of the Landing Theater Company. Welcome, David.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here. So I know you're a busy man. You have a lot going on too, just much like us. You run your own theater, you work at the Alley as a company member, you do so much work for everybody. You show up for lots of people in town. And so we want to cover a little bit of all that stuff going on in your life. Yeah. So Philip, what do you think?
Yeah,
what do you want to ask David about?
Why don't we start with the Landing, and why don't you tell us what the Landing's been doing during COVID, if you want, but most especially what's coming up.
Yeah, well, we've been mostly laying low. We once COVID started, we had our New American Boys Playwriting Festival in place, and then we had to rethink it and eventually moved it and put it online last year, which worked out pretty well. And so this year we haven't been able to produce anything, so we've been sort of doing the festival and getting ready for that, and that's about to happen again. It's going to be on April 24th through May 2nd. And it's basically a playwriting festival. We feature 4 plays from American playwrights. We had about over 350 plays submitted in blind rounds. And these are the 4 that were selected as the finalists. And so we're excited about that. We're recording them ahead of time on this year as opposed to last year, which was live. Primarily because just technology. We just, as a company with the at the level we are, we don't have the means to. There's just technology you just can't keep up. So you end up getting stuck with stuff that in front of everybody live that you just never anticipated, no matter how well you prepared. So we're recording those now, and we're excited. We've got a great group of artists, and all the playwrights are very, very happy that with the work we're doing with their plays. It's a great process. We are doing this primarily and really only to help the playwrights. This has really been great for them to really kind of look at their plays carefully and massage them. And they've actually, through this process, because they we're dealing with it longer than just the one reading, they get a chance to actually look at it, rewrite things, rethink, do some tweaking that they wouldn't have normally gotten to do. So it's been exciting.
Yeah.
Tell us, you mentioned how many plays were submitted? Well,
this year, there were over 350 plays. There's been some years that we've gotten close to 500 plays that get submitted.
What's the process like for selecting them? Because did you read all of them, or you must have?
You're like, no, right. I was like, I can't read 350 plays in a year.
500 plays.
Yeah, I know.
How do you work that?
Well, there are some people in our group. We have 3 literary associates in our group who read quite a few of the plays, and then we hire readers. For the initial read of all the plays, we hire readers and kind of divvy it up amongst the people who have agreed to read plays.
Yeah.
And then everybody reads plays and does a report on them, and they get paid per play.
Yeah.
And then once we get through that, then we kind of shrink it down to more within our group. So usually with that many plays, that first round will narrow it down to probably about 60 to 75 plays. And then after that, those get read again, and that usually gets down to anywhere from about 20 to 25. And then from there we go to 10, typically about 10. This year we kind of got it down to that level of about 12 on that second round. So then out of those plays we picked the 4. So
cool. And do you have a committee that decides on the eventual plays that get shown, or do you make the decision as artistic director, or how does that work?
No, there's a committee. It's myself and Eric Moore and Rachel Green were the ones sort of in charge of the festival this year. The Rachel primarily was in charge of sort of cataloging everything, and Eric was in charge of sort of relationships with the playwrights. It's basically the three of us and 𝗕𝗲𝗆𝗀𝗶𝗱𝗲, who also is a literary associate. He was in audit this year as well.
Wow.
And so, Crystal Youtham, who's she's our resident costume designer.
Oh.
She was also involved in that final selection process. So,
I think that's great. I noticed that the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize was just announced yesterday, and I noticed that one of their judges was a designer, an English designer, and I think that's really smart to have designers read new plays and bring their kind of design eye to the judging process. I think that's really smart.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get folks to read them, it just depends on whether people feel they have the time to. You can't force people to do it, And it's one, actually bringing that point up, that's one thing that I've forgotten to mention about the festival this year, which I'm really excited about, which is that we've added a design component to the festival this year. So in addition to just the readings of the plays, each play has been assigned a design team and a theater. They've been assigned one of the theaters in Houston. So one of the plays is being designed for stages, the Smith Theater stages. One of them is being designed at Main Street. One of them is being designed for the Newhouse Theater at the Alley. And the other one is Matchbox One, which is the big theater at Match.
Yeah.
So each play has been placed there, and the design teams have taken the play and are designing an actual production of the show in those theaters. So after the reading, there will be a talk back with the playwright, the director, and the cast. And then following that will be a design presentation where the designers will get to show you what they've created in terms of making this show a reality. We did that for a very strategic reason because, one thing that we had in the past with the New American Voices was it was primarily a festival that was more about development. It was a chance for us to showcase these new plays. So writers would come in, they'd fly into town if they were from out of town, and they'd be able to gather and socialize with each other and then hear their play read. But when we put it online, we realized that there's no way for it not to feel like it's a performance, like it's a production in some way. And so we decided that we needed to kind of lean into that. We either had to keep trying to fight against it or lean into it. And so the point this year is really to try to show people in a more visceral way what these plays might look like if they actually were produced. We're trying to convince theaters, you should do these plays. We should give them a chance, more of a chance. So rather than if you invite an artistic director to come in and watch it, they might watch the play and say, "Oh, that's a really good, interesting play. I kind of like that play," and then not think anything of it. But by seeing the full blown everything in a real theater, we're hoping that it will really kind of put a spark in somebody's mind about, maybe this could go on my stage,
Yeah.
So we're really excited about that feature, and the designers are excited. They're doing some amazing designs, and so it's been really a cool thing, and the playwrights have just been really excited about it as well. So
that's great. Now, how did you get interested in developing a playwriting platform for your company, being one of the main things you're known for? It's one of your obviously one of your main objectives in your heart. You have a lot of dedication to it. You've obviously felt very passionate about it for a very long time. How did you get really interested in that being a primary purpose for you with The Landing?
Well, it's interesting because it didn't start off that way.
Right.
I'm an actor, and when I first thought about starting a theater company, I was going to start a theater company. I wanted to be a company about actors. But it kind of when I look back at everything that we've done at The Landing, the one thing that I think is the through line is that we've always tried to help people. When we started the company when I was teaching at University of Houston downtown, and part of that idea was our mission kind of dealt with us trying to create a professional company in the summer, so that students could learn from professionals. That it was a bridge to the profession was the idea behind it. That was part of what was in the mission statement. So it was trying to build this great, and it was supposed to be the Landing Theater Festival, which is going to be many plays and New American Voices and all this stuff going on in the summer, people coming from all over the country to check it all out. I was had these great dreams, but never had enough money to visualize any of that. We do one show at a time, and it was summer. So it was always kind of about sort of that idea of sort of connecting professionals with promising students, promising, soon to be professionals, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And then we created the New American Voice because we wanted that to be part of the whole thing and stuff. But one of the things that we discovered with our mission statement as we developed it, because eventually the mission statement changed after we left the school, we were talking about impacting American theater. And the one thing we learned over time is that in Houston anyway, New York is different, but in Houston anyway, nobody really cares about American theater. If that's not something that somebody reads and says, "Oh, you're about that? I want to support you guys. I want to give you money in order to promote more of that." No one in Houston cares that much about the concept of American theater. And so we were kind of looking around, and we ended up changing it to American playwriting, and that was better. People do have an opinion about American playwriting. And then as we started, doing more of it, then the passion for what this was and what it can do for playwrights and the importance of it in terms of where we're going with theater. I always wanted something that would impact the nation. It was never supposed to be a company where we were just doing shows to do shows, to have a theater company do theater. It was always looking for a way to have a national presence. And the New American Voices started giving us that. And as we started doing that, we started developing more sort of local programs for playwrights and sort of expanding that out. And as you find that you're actually, successful at it, I have to say that one of the things that I'm the proudest of is that I've heard more than once, certainly isn't the case with every playwright, but I've heard more than once from playwrights who have taken the time to say that I've done my best writing working with the Landing.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's great. That's important.
And that's because, we, certainly try to nurture playwrights, but we're more about trying to help them write the best play they can write. Sometimes, if there's a problem, you can't, sometimes you need somebody to say, you can't leave this up to a director or an actor to solve the problem. Fix it. It's in the writing. Fix it. It's your problem. It's not anybody else's. And because, they understand that we're trying to help them and not only help them fix their play, but help them be a better writer.
Yeah.
They really kind of dig deep within themselves often, and it's, so I feel very good about it. I feel very proud about the fact that so many playwrights have really appreciated the efforts that we've done as a company.
Good. Well, I think it's an important program that has been really wonderful in regards to what it's done for the city. I think bringing attention to new plays from Houston and around the country and just making us all aware how important plays are is a very, the new plays and the fostering of playwrights is vitally important. And some of us, do it better than others. We bring in some new plays, but we certainly don't foster people the way you do. You do that very uniquely and very wonderfully.
I'm impressed that you've assembled a team that obviously feels the same way you do about plays, and that they help you. I know you hire people to read the plays, but still, it's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And Fourth Wall has never done that, and because it's a massive undertaking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that's tricky and difficult, because when you do new works, often you take a hit. And I have to say, I'm really glad that the Alley is doing the all new festival, that's been brought here. Liz has done an amazing job, because the problem you have is that in Houston anyway, and I think it's true of most cities that are not like theater hubs.
Yeah.
Audiences have a tough time understanding that there's value of going to theater that isn't quite finished yet, and that's not a failure or just a waste of my time. But getting into what the process is of it, you know, I keep trying to cultivate an audience that understands development and that really wants to be there to say, I want to see where this is and where it's going to go next and where it's, and Wordsmith has a group of audiences that really get that, understand that. And the Alley All New has really helped in a big way audiences that you know have had some interest but not like deep interest in it to sort of go buy into that, and they're really starting to get educated about what play development is about. And I'm hoping with the landing that more of that would happen. But that's been the hardest part. And then when you try to produce plays, like Wordsmith doesn't produce, but we do. When you produce a new play, it's tricky to get audiences to come. People tend to sit back and sort of like, if I hear from everybody that it's really, really great, then maybe I'll go. But they're not like coming in like ready to be like first in line for that kind of thing. They might at another kind of show that they know about, that they've heard reviews of, that they you know have seen it floating around a lot.
We know from our programming that, you know, if we do a play with a title like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf or Glass Menagerie, it's going to sell a certain amount of tickets more than a play like that people haven't, Small Mouth Sounds, or even Realistic Joneses, you know, or, and then if it's a totally unknown play, which we've done only a couple, but, you know, world premieres, but those are the hardest sell. Luckily, I mean, you know, ticket sales don't mean everything to us, but you know, and you know this.
But you also don't want an empty house for, you know, people to cultivate the growth of a play. They need the feedback. They need the audience interaction when they're growing a play. That's a really important part of cultivation of new work. So that's kind of you're talking about a really interesting problem. One of the things I think you bring up that's really fascinating too, and that the Alley is doing so beautifully with their new play festival. They do all these new plays, and then they actually put a couple in their season. So
done that too.
Yes, and you have too. And so when a theater is able to do that, and I think Matt Hune is starting to do that as well. And when you can do that, you start to cultivate that audience. And like you said, Wordsmith, which I also been involved with on some level, which has brought some beautiful plays to readings. Where when the audience starts to get trained that, I saw that, you know, three versions back when they read it a year ago, and now I'm getting to go see it done at the Alley or at the Landing or at Matt Hune's theater. And then if more people had the wherewithal to do that, or the funding, maybe if we found a way to get some of the funding houses in this city to help back that up too. It's a struggle.
Funding is the big issue for most small theater companies. You know, it's, you know, I kind of liken it to, you know, if you going to put on a race and the people with the money to build the big, you know, really ultra fast cars, you know, are entering it, and you got the poor person who that has only the means to just take a standard vehicle and super. They may be excellent drivers and excellent mechanics, but they don't really have as much of a chance of winning that race if they don't have the tools to enter it, you know, in the right way. And that's what a lot of the small theater companies are kind of facing, is that, you know, and every year there's just some incredible performances, incredible, you know, productions that get done on a very, very small scale that really are like gems of the season, you know. But I keep thinking what you could do if you just had a little money, you know what I mean?
And that also, and it brings up the other part of when you're talking about new plays require like hours of work. So if you've got a small theater that can't pay people a 40-hour work week and they have to have another job, how can you ask people to go to work from, let's just say it's a 9 to 5, you know, go to work 9 to 5, and then to cultivate the process of working a play and rewriting and working and rewriting to get to, let's say, production. That's a 3-month process. To go after work every day for 5 hours to cultivate a play up to where you then put it in production, that's asking a lot of people, and then not being able to pay them very much at all. You know, if they have families, if they have other things, you're killing them.
Yeah, it's tough, and like I said, I wish there was more, means to, for a lot of the groups to find it, And it's interesting, I had a conversation with an artistic director at one point from a major theater, and he said something interesting because he was talking to me and a group of folks about being Texas actors and actors in Houston and all of that. And I kind of brought up, because people were just talking about their position as actors, but I brought up, the plight of sort of small theater companies in town. And he said, I spend a lot of time in private rooms with very wealthy people. And I can tell you what they say. He said, they mostly say, why should we give them money? They're all doing the same play. And we've all seen it in New York and London. And so we're just going to sit there and see a lesser version of it. And it's not going to get any better. They're just going to keep hiring their friends. Well, first of all, I went off on him. That is not true.
That's not true.
Absolutely not true.
Right.
Don't tell me that you're going to get the same show out of me that I'm doing rubbing two nickels together if I had a budget the size of a Newhouse show at the Alley. I have actors who want to work with me who I've asked to work, and they can't do it because I don't have the money to pay them.
Yeah.
And so I said, this idea that we're all just sort of stroking our friends and what have you is a wrong-headed idea. The truth of the matter is that there are some companies in every city that are, and a lot of them that do fit that mold, that are doing the same play. I've seen it here where the same production is being done, or the same play is being done in four different theaters around the city. And most folks have access only to catalogs, so they go through catalogs and look for the best player, or they go to New York and try to grab the next greatest thing that they know is a hit. But that's one of the reasons why The Landing, we tried to always try to be bringing in newer things, plays that often wouldn't be picked by other theater companies, plays that wouldn't be, that folks haven't heard, stories that are being told that aren't sort of the typical usual, kitchen drama kind of things. But I think that's the biggest problem we have in general, is that the people, a lot, I shouldn't say everybody, because we certainly have some really wonderful supporters, but there's a large population of the folks that have money and are supporters of the arts that really don't believe that small companies are worth investing in. And that's what has to change. That's the thing that has to kind of, and how do you do that? A person with money, they're not going to change because they get insulted. They're thinking because they get forced into anything. They're not forced into anything. So,
well, I think a lot of it too, what you're talking about is a really important issue. And I think a lot of people that are what we're calling big donors or big corporations or people like that, they have horse before the cart mentality. Also, they think they want to see what you're doing that's so fantastic and amazing before they want to put any money in it. So they want to see that you're carrying out all this extra programming into schools, and that you're building this Shakespeare program that you've put in 25 high schools. So you've got all this program out here. Then you've got 6 shows on a main stage that are $80,000 budgets that are in competition with anything on Broadway or new things. They want the cart before the horse. They want to see the product they're buying before they buy the product.
Yeah.
And that's always problematic, because how do you produce a product that you can't pay for?
Well, yeah, right. I mean, I kind of liken it to wealth in America. Like you go to a very, very poor neighborhood and tell people, well, when you prove that you can make money, then I'll give you money. Yeah. And so for that person who's struggling to make money, that's kind of a non-answer.
Yeah.
But the other thing too, that I think that that the community in whole, as a whole, needs to understand is that, and somebody said this, I don't know who said it, but and they weren't talking about theater, they were talking about something else. They were talking about nature, but they were saying that you can always tell the health of an area by how much life it will support. So if you go to a forest and you see not a lot of different kinds of trees, you don't see a lot of different kinds of grass or animals, it's a sign that the area is unhealthy. And if you go to an area and there's abundances of things like that, then you know it's a very, very healthy environment. And cities are like that, communities are like that, culture is like that. And so if you're only supporting a few stocks of things and letting the rest kind of die away, then that's a very unhealthy situation. And where if you invest in sort of the fertilizer that's going to grow all of the different varieties of diversity, of opportunity, of all the new works and older plays, community theaters as well as professional theaters. If you invest in all of that, then you're going to have a very, very, very healthy community, and it's a healthy culture. It's a healthy place to raise a family, and it's a healthy place to feel intellectually stimulated. And so that's one thing. We can get that message out and continue to move in that direction. That would be really, really great for the city. Not to say that some of that isn't happening.
No, there's some amazing people. We have some amazing people involved in our theater who believe a lot in the small theater community in this town and give a lot to that. And they give to groups of theater. They don't just give to us, they give to everyone. And we, like you, are big proponents of don't just give to one person, give to everyone. And part of our show is, hey, this is about all these theaters are of value, and you should be at every theater. You shouldn't just be at one theater seeing a play. You should be at every theater. Cultivating this amongst your family, your friends, the community, everyone, that there's a great value in each different company for lots of different experiences and lots of different things to learn and to cultivate in yourself, will change will make you a richer person in general, and your environment will be healthier and more full and better, and you'll have that to spread to somebody next to you. So I totally agree with you on that. And I think we agree with you that that's all true. And I think sometimes you're right. It can feel like you're in a starving environment and that you don't know where to get sustenance and where to get that nourishment you need so that things can continue to grow and prosper. And
I have to
theater's
say
hard.
that I think that Houston as a city has done a decent job at trying to do that. But I've felt for a long time, ever since I was a kid, really, that the country has essentially turned its back on the arts on the federal level. I mean, the National Endowment for the Arts was cut drastically in the 80s when Jesse Helms attacked it, and in the Reagan years, and it's never recovered from that. And I've always felt that should be the driving force, and that would change things amazingly for all of us.
And that with the attack on the education system and the arts in the education system, and making it all about testing and eliminating music, art, theater. And when you do that and you put that responsibility on theaters to bring it to the children or to music festivals and to different groups, then you burden the theater that already is poor and trying to survive to bring art to the community. Now you're burdening them to educate your children.
Organizations have been asked to become
the educators. And that's not what we are. We're artists. Although right.
We all
are, and we all are actually educators, but you're right. It's a tough thing.
You may have something to say about that, and you may, but I'd love to talk about what you have coming up. I'd like to shift gears entirely and talk about what's coming up for you at the Alley online and beyond, what you know.
Well, as far as what I know, we just finished our digital season. So most of it's out already. The next thing that I'm in is Enemy of the People. We did a full production of Enemy of the People online, and that should be out probably within a month, I would imagine. They've been sort of, Medea is finishing out this week, I believe. I think so. Friday or something. It's done. 𝗕𝗲𝗶𝘀𝗀 just opened, which is really good. You should check it out. It's really,
Okay, good.
We will.
all of these things are, but
Sure.
but some interesting things about that, because what was cool about that one was they made it look like they were actually in the same room, which was really cool.
Even though they weren't.
Right.
They weren't. They were in their homes, in their houses.
Yeah.
And and Lauren Reynolds directed it, and she kind of did it from a couple of different angles and stuff. So it's the first one I've seen that's been done like that, and it's really a short piece. It's like 20 minutes long,
Okay.
but it's really well done.
Okay.
Then so that's happening, and then Pariah, which I wasn't in, that's Todd and Sean, Todd Waite and Sean Hamilton, and that's going to be, I believe, after that. And then there's Old Black and White Hollywood, which was a reading that folks did in January. That's going to be coming out soon. I wasn't involved in that either. So that's what's going on over at the Alley at the moment. And we're getting ready to do a project for a poetry center in town, and so we're kind of slowly knocking those things out into the summer, and then as far as the fall, they haven't announced anything yet. I know they know what the plays are, but I'm not allowed to say until they.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, we know our plays, but we're not allowed to say,
And,
which we hope, we're all hoping, I think everyone's hoping we're going to be in the theater.
Yeah, is the unspoken plan that it's going to be a live performance in the fall?
Yeah, that's the idea, is that we would start like at the end of August, and then open like near the beginning of October on the first show, and then do a full season of plays.
Yeah.
But they're, the Alley has been very smart about things. They've always had, they have multiple plans always.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of the immediate plan. It's looking like it could possibly, happen. But they also have a plan that's later for maybe opening at Christmas Carol.
Sure.
Plan for after Christmas Carol. And then if we get to September and the September plan doesn't happen, they'll probably put another plan for April or whatever.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to kind of make sure you plan for, the unthinkable, because people didn't think in September last year that we wouldn't be back in the theaters.
Yeah, that's so good. And I would like to talk real quick. And this is a weird question, maybe, and you can just tell me you want to answer it if you want, but you've been an Alley Theater company member for how many years now? That's not the question.
Well, this is the end of my 20th year at the Alley.
Wow.
20th year
That's
as a company
amazing.
member at the Alley Theater.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be a company member at the Alley now? And maybe what did it mean when you first started, and how has it changed?
Well, interesting. I mean, the way that company membership exists has changed, has had different incarnations and stuff. So it's kind of, at first I was just, naive little like, wow, I got into a company. I'm going to be doing this thing and stuff, And so I didn't really know what company membership really amounted to, other than that I knew I had a job. And at the time, we had two contracts. We had a contract for the season with the Alley and a contract for each show. So all of our LORC contracts were for each show. So your LORC contract, paid whatever the rates were for that. And then your season contract only covered. Hello?
I think we lost you.
Oh, did you?
Oh, there we go.
We lost
Never
you
mind.
for a minute.
All right.
Sorry.
So
Yeah.
your LORC contracts paid the rate, and then the Alley paid. Sorry.
Maybe the Alley came down and said, "You can't
Hey,
tell
we're
me
not
about
talking about that.
No.
No.
that."
We didn't quote any
But
numbers.
you said something, and I want to just, since we got cut off, you said, other than, it just meant that I had a job. And I remember, when I was a young actor, just having a job, that was a big
It's a
deal.
big deal.
Well, especially in the theater world and stuff, and this
Yeah.
idea that you belong somewhere, you know what I mean? Like, you go from show to show and you have gaps and you're hustling around here and there. And, I spent 14 years in New York running around and beating the streets and all that stuff. So the idea of,
You do a job in New York, or you do a job out of town and you're living in New York. And when that job's over, almost always, well, that's it. You don't know what the next thing is, it's
Right.
that life of the freelance actor. It's a very powerless job.
yeah, it really is. And certainly in New York, you spend most of your life as an auditioner.
Yeah.
You're auditioning, at 4 to 6 times a week, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day.
I would
For
be a
everything from
terrible
commercials to theater to, anything that kind of comes up, you're constantly running around doing stuff like that. So, yeah, it was a very different thing to sort of be in a place and just, know that you had work. Because the other thing too is that when I came to Houston, my family has been here for years. My dad grew up here, and when I got out of college, they sold the house and moved back here to Houston. So it was kind of my home base back and forth. I spent that first year here, and then I got into Juilliard and I took off to New York. And as I said, I spent 14 years there. So back and forth, and then a year and a half in LA. When I came back here, because my dad had gotten ill and he was in the hospital, we weren't sure if he was going to make it out. So I needed to come and help the family out and stuff. So when I moved back, I was like, okay, this is it. And I literally was like, that's it. That's the end of that career. I'll do some local theater, and I'll do some trade shows and what people do, and but my dream of what my career might end up being kind of was gone. And so I got a job at an oil company, doing customer service for the railroad accounts, making sure that railroads had grease for their tracks and things like that. And I only got called when there was a problem. And did that for a year. Meanwhile, I kept sending out my headshots to all the theaters that I knew of in town 4 times that year, and no one would even give me an audition. And I remember going to stages, and I don't know who was the general manager at the time, but Rob Bundy was the artistic director. I knew Rob from New York. He worked at Hartford when I was there, and it was a project that he was trying to get me to do in New York that we messed around with for months, but it never came through. So he knew me. I went in to meet Rob, and just, and he wasn't there, and whoever the person was, who was the general manager then?
I don't remember.
That was 21 years ago. So, but Rob wasn't there, so he came out to talk to me, and I said, well, I know Rob, can you give him my headshot and let him know I'm in town and stuff? And he looked at me and he said, well, the co-op auditions had just passed, and that the co-ops are now called the Alliance auditions.
Right.
There's a big, for those of you who don't know, this big group audition where all or most of the theaters in town audition everybody that they can fit into 2 days. It's a once a year thing. And I looked at him and I said, are you saying that I'm gonna have to wait a year? And he just kind of went,
Wow.
And what I should have done in retrospect was I should have just gone back. I should have kept going back until I talked to Rob, but but I didn't. Stupid me. But the point is that I kept sending my headshot to every theater in town for a year, and it took the Alliance auditions before any of them saw me. And I was just like, how could that be? I mean, I graduated top of my class from Juilliard. I worked at the Public and the Guthrie and no one wants to see me, not even take a look. It was shocking. I go to the audition, I get done with my pieces, and suddenly all the people are turning over the headshot and what have you stuff. I leave the theater. Rob comes running out of the theater. David, and it's good to see you. And then a week later, James Black called me and said, hey, we'd like to meet you. And so I went in and auditioned for them. And he said, well, I like what I see. What we're trying to do is add some company members. We're looking for people that are in town, if we can find the right fit. Greg's doing the show right now. And he's in tech, but we'll call you afterwards. So I kind of waited. About a month went by. I finally sent James an email saying, "Hey, you kind of said that, you know." And so then he called me in. He and Greg went downstairs into the new house. They auditioned me there, and like, you know, Greg said, "Well, so what do you plan on doing in Houston?" And I said, "Well, I just planned on, you know, maybe doing some local theater and just some trade shows."
So there you have it. Can I work here? Yeah.
Well, yeah. And then he said, so then he says, "Well, actually, I think you ought to be working for us if that's okay with you."
Oh, good. Good. Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, that's fine with me," you know. And that's kind of how I got started, you know. So, but yeah. So that's I don't know. I don't even remember what the question was, but
well, how you got started, and if it's how is it different being a member now 20 years later than what it started when you started? Obviously, it was very important when you started because you didn't know if you were going to work again.
You must have done 100 shows at the Alley by now.
Yeah.
Well, not quite, but I've done quite a few. I'm over 60, so. But I have to say, like, you know, the one thing that is different is that now we are like full-time at the Alley, which is something that even at the time we started, we had that double contract thing and whatever. That covered everything except for the summers. And then Allison happened and flooded the theater the first time. And then after a while that went away. And then you were just kind of, for the rest of that time, you were there. It was great to have a home. You had to have every year having somebody who was looking at you and saying, how can I make sure they work? And primarily make sure you get your health weeks. And so having that was really great, but it also was difficult because you know, you're resident, but you're not, but when they're not wanting to use you, then you're out on your own and stuff, you know, and so it was both a feeling of security and also a feeling like you weren't any different than anybody else, really, because everybody else gets a job at the Alley and they do their show and they go and then they have to deal with trying to find out what else they want to do to make money and live, you know. So it was a lot like that and stuff, which, you know, so the new status we have now changes all that. And Rob has done and BK have done a much more than I was asking for, because I was like, it should be, if we're resident, we should be resident. When the costume shop has a dull moment or there's not a lot of work, you don't tell them to go away for 4 weeks and get on unemployment and come back when we get ready for the issue again. You keep them working, you know, and we're the only employees that's the case. You just kind of say to us, we're done, come back later. And they listened and they did better than I thought they would. So we now have a really amazing situation. So I'm really, really pleased about that. And I think it's going to be, it's a new chapter that I'm really excited to see where it goes.
I think it's fantastic that the Alley has made you guys full-time employees and given you salaries, because it leads the way in the nation, and it's in Houston. And you know me, I've been a proponent for pay from like day one. I'm all about pay, you know that. I'm like, you know, I'm like screaming from the rooftops for a decade, right? So I think the fact that they did that and that they said, and what you just explained, you know, why is it that costume folks, when there's not a show, yes, they can put things away, they sort, they clean, they do things, but talking about the value of an artist not having, you know, just because they're not in a show or they're not, you know, stepping in to go to rehearsal, whatever, they're prepping plays, they're working on things, they're doing these. You don't discard them like they don't matter. I think it's fantastic. I love it. It really inspired me.
Does that mean, David, that like if, you know, if, because this has happened once or twice, Fourth Wall wants you to come over and do a play and we offer it to you. Does that mean that there's absolutely no chance that you'd be available to do a job at an outside theater because the Alley's keeping you all busy all the time, or what does it mean? Well, no,
if there is, if it doesn't interfere with what they have planned for you, then you just go to talk to them and say, hey, this opportunity's come up. Am I clear? If you're clear, they'll be like, cool, you know, go ahead and do that. but they also have sort of made a more of a commitment to trying to make sure that we're more engaged than before. And I had a lot of very, very, very lean seasons over at the Alley, not only in terms of the number of shows, but also the kinds of parts that I was getting.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Rob is really making an effort to make sure that everybody has more things to do. I mean, we've got, you know, 2 theaters and however many shows a year, and only like 9 of us in the company, 8 of us right now.
Big play festival. You have a lot of stuff.
We should be able to stay busy. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So yeah, so they you know, they've made a commitment on that, and so we'll see how that goes. So they're, you know, so with that in mind, you know, I don't know what the season's going to look like, but there's probably not going to be a whole lot of like big gaps where a person, you know, could go away for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. But then again, too, if it's an important enough thing, I'm sure that we're free to go in and plead a case and say, look, you know, could we do this? It's such a big opportunity or whatever it is. So it just depends, you know. But the answer is that they're not completely closed off to it. It's not like we can't.
Yeah,
like we sold our soul.
Something to try to work it out.
There's a real generosity that is coming from the leadership at the Alley now that was just towards the theater community, and I think towards the employees of the Alley as well. That you know, I certainly didn't feel when I was working at the Alley back in the day, and we all know what we're talking about.
No, I did, and I feel like as someone who never could get my foot in that door and worked very hard the first years I was here to even get paid attention to, and like you, my story's a lot like yours, but then I started a theater, so I kind of felt like I didn't have to keep trying to get paid attention to. But yeah, I mean, I had, you know, Circle in the Square, Stella Adler, a huge bunch of credits, and I couldn't get anybody to look at me. You know, I mean, Ken finally gave me a job after 1.5 years. But I had to work very hard to get anybody to even, you know, pay attention that I was here. So I totally understand that. It's a very strange thing in this town. You know, and I know that it's just hard when you come here and you're a little older. For me, it was, I think, being older too, that people have who they like and they use who they want. So trying to knock in a door is tough.
But, you know, we can't deny, and you may be different about this, David, but I can't deny that I have my favorite actors in town. And,
of
you know,
course.
when we're planning a season, we think people that we already know. It's a natural human thing. And so you sometimes forget to think outside of the box when you're casting.
It's hard to, sometimes.
And
Or you don't know of people. You just don't even know of people that are out there. And if you hold an open call and they don't answer it, you don't know about them.
You go to the Alliance auditions and that person might, you know, they
have
maybe
a bad
they don't
day.
give a good audition that day. And so you don't pay attention to
God
them,
knows
you know?
I hate those things. I'm a Meisner actor, you know that. I gotta have that person. That cold environment's tough for me. I don't like it.
Auditions are what they are, and it's unfortunate that we have, you know, that they are what they are, but we haven't come up with anything better. That's the only reason why.
I know it. It's not the same thing. They're different skills. It's a different skill set.
Exactly. They're a completely different animal. I mean, I know people who are really, really good auditioners who are terrible actors.
I do too.
And people who are really terrible auditioners who are wonderful.
Great actors. Me too.
And, you know, and I fit into the latter category. I could tell you some stories about some. No, I won't tell you stories about.
You know, I could be the worst audition. I'm telling you. I think about sometimes going, can you just give me back my headshot? Can we please erase who I am in your mind?
There's many times that I wish that I would have done that, and they would have let me. And I all why didn't I just stop and say, can I start again? Because they would have let me.
I know. It's horrible.
We all have a story though, I think, where it's like, I have 2 stories, like the worst audition I ever gave, but I got the job. That has happened to me.
That's the funniest.
And the converse, like
that was a great audition. How did I not get it?
I'm like talking to the director, and I can tell I've got it, and then it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing, and you never get any feedback really, so you don't know.
Don't know why.
You have no idea what was good or bad. It's a horrible thing. It's just this gut-wrenching, terrible thing. For those of you out there watching who aren't artists, the audition. Horrible. But hey, job interviews. For some people, job interviews are just as traumatic to them as as an audition. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, but as people who cast shows, all of us, we also know what the casting process is like. And often it has nothing to do with things that people might be self-conscious about. It simply had to do with, you know, something we needed that nobody was aware of, or, you know, somebody was taller than the other person, or we're kind of looking at hair color, or, you know, there's different things that come up that don't really have anything to do with that. If you'd have done a better job auditioning.
No, sometimes you've got 3 great people and you're trying to make the best fits, and somebody doesn't get it and they work right. And you're like, you know, I had to pick this person because they fit better with that person. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's hard too, when you know who the best person is and you're like, boy, I want this person. But you know, they're not going to fit with the rest of the people.
They just
and
don't
because
work.
this one person that you have has to be in the show because they don't fit anywhere else.
And I've made the mistake. I've made the mistake of not picking someone because of what they look like, as opposed to who was the best actor.
Mm-hmm.
I should have picked the best actor.
Always
Every casting person has done that, where they go, ooh, I should have sacrificed a little on the look or the way that looks, or the age a little bit, and gone with the better actor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, or the more seasoned actor, or whatever that might mean, you know, it's hard. And then sometimes I've picked a really young person that I thought, oh, I'm going to pay for this. They're green. I'm not going to get what I want. And they blow me away.
Yeah.
So it's been both ways, right? It's really interesting,
yeah.
isn't it? That whole process of getting started as an artist, the audition process, I learn stuff all the time and am surprised by stuff all the time too.
Yeah. It's tricky, but I mean, that's what we have to do. We have to do that audition thing, and, you know.
It also kind of makes it exciting, doesn't it? As, you know, creators, you're like, ooh, how am I going to work with this? And how am I going to make this better and wonderful and fit in and make us all feel like we're, you know, being an ensemble and growing. And I think it's kind of exciting, even if it's not perfect. Sometimes that's even better.
Yeah.
So how can we make this the best it can be? And, you know, what's perfect, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
What
I,
is
I haven't found that yet. So you can call me when you find it, David.
Well, that's the one thing about it. Theater is imperfect, and as imperfect as people are.
That's right.
So it's kind of interesting. And I think that, you know, the best thing that I can do for the most part when I'm trying to cast a show is look for people who I feel like who are pliable and who I feel like I can communicate with. Because it's my job to help no matter where their talent is, whether they're really seasoned or whether they're they have a lot to learn.
Yeah, they're young.
That my job is to help get as best performance out of them as I can, to get the best work out of them as I can, and hopefully help them grow. Like, you know, I would hope that any person who is going through a production with me as at the helm feels like that, and, you know, that feels like that they are a better actor because of it.
Yeah, that's my goal too, I hope. I think, well, we're both teachers, and I think that's a really important thing as a teacher. You hope if I can help you grow and become better, then we've had a good experience.
Are you continuing to teach through this? Forgive me for not
Oh,
knowing.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And do you teach through the alley now, or
independently?
privately, or both?
No, independently mostly. I mean, the alley asked me to do things here and there, you know, like, you know, there's workshops and other things. Often we're asked to speak to schools and stuff, to both like high school, junior, middle school, and universities and what have you. But I also teach, you know, I have private students, and then, you know, occasionally I'll throw a class in if it kind of fits in with what's going on in my world. So it's shifted a bit, because now we've gone at the alley from our day off being Monday to Monday through Friday deal. We're off on the weekends.
What we're gonna do.
And
we're doing that too.
Yeah, so that kind of helps us line up our lives where the normal people live, you know.
Yes.
Also, we're pretty much 9 to 5, or, you know, our day ends around 6.
Yeah.
For most of the time.
Sure.
So our evenings are free unless we're doing a show. So it's going to be a different schedule. We have yet to really put it into full effect, because we haven't been at the theater doing our thing. But it's a different kind of schedule. So my classes were typically on on Monday nights because
Right, right.
did it, so if I do a class, it will, shift around to the weekend somewhere. And I
Well,
teach students anytime,
I always had really good responses to Saturday afternoons. So I think
Yeah.
people like to do Saturday afternoon, like 2 to 5. I would always have a pretty good response. So
Yeah.
well, I think we're hitting our window of time here.
We are.
Yeah, that went by like so fast.
I want to thank super fan Veronica, who is
She always
watching
shows.
us,
We
and
love
just
Veronica.
thank
She
you,
always
Veronica.
comes.
Yeah.
But
David, is there anything that we haven't asked you or that you wanted to say before we say good night to you?
Well, no, I don't, I just was here just to see what you wanted to talk about and, with some thoughts, so.
well, we're all really excited about your festival coming up in a couple weeks, your All-American New Voices, and we're going to make sure we check that out. So
As
please,
well as Enemy of the People.
and Enemy of the People too, from the alley. So
Yeah, we'll see what that's all. I've got
watch
my
it.
fingers crossed on that. Oh, my
I-
God.
oh,
Come on.
it's tough, I
No,
know, but
we
I'm sure
know.
you guys will be great.
Yeah, it's weird being asked to do something that we haven't really been trained for and have no experience in, which is be some sort of TV/theater actor, and
And
no
you're not
one
with
knows
the other
what
people,
that
they're
means.
putting it together. It's hard.
Yeah, it's it's one of the things that I, as an actor and as a director, the one thing that I try to do is really zone in on what truth is, and regardless of whether that's sort of a standard, realistic kind of truth, or if it's a very stylistic truth. And it's when I don't tend to do my best work is when I'm focused on too many other things that are not about truth. And that's the hard thing about, sort of the digital world, is that, we're dealing with everything. We're trying to do our cameras and our lights, our makeup. We're trying to get all that stuff together.
Where's your
Get all the
sight
buttons,
line? What do you
and then go, it's like I haven't had time to think yet. And I'm, so it's tricky. So.
We got a bunch of really nice comments. Suddenly, Pam Knowlting, David, thank you for many years of superb performances. We love watching you. Pam is a fan of Fourth Wall and obviously the Alley. She's also a fellow Drake Bulldog.
Knows Philip. Sally Burtonshaw says hi. She's great. We know Sally.
Anyway, well, we've taken up an hour of your time, David, and we're so grateful that you spent it with us.
So everybody wants to, if you all want to stick around for a minute, we're going to give you an update on what's happening with Fourth Law, but we're going to let David go and have a good evening. And we are so grateful you were here.
Thanks,
David.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care,
Thanks so
everybody.
much. Bye, David.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.
Well,
So,
Kim, why don't you tell the people what's coming up at Fourth Wall?
all right. So what's coming up for us? Well, first of all, next week, we are going to not skip a week, everyone. We're going to go next week and we're going to have Miss Lovely Eboni Bell on the show. For those of you who don't know Eboni, she was in our reading series for Christmas. She did our Christmas story time. So you might have caught her in that if you watched Christmas story time. And she also is a new position at Stages, which is she's in charge of equity and diversity.
Yeah, I don't know what her exact title is.
I don't know the exact title, but
next
she's
week.
going to tell us. But she's in charge of equity and diversity. So at that organization now, and we're going to have her next week.
Yeah, and she's Ebony's. In my mind, she's at Stages, but she's become a force in the Houston arts community for equity and diversity, and we're really glad to know her.
Yes, she's very important.
And you'll be glad to make her acquaintance.
Okay, good. So I'm moving along. I'm trying to get these people off.
Whatever.
Okay,
So you want to talk some more about Ebony?
Oh, great. Come on, Ebony, we love you. I'm just trying to get this finished. Okay, so then we also want to tell you that we have a really exciting programming coming up. We have a reunion of Mr. Philip Lales, Juilliard Group 19 in White Rabbit, Red Rabbit. This is the Houston premiere of this adapted production. The Alley did a production of this a little while back, live. So we're doing the first production of it on Zoom. And of course, we have Philip's wonderful classmate, Laura Linney, has agreed to join us. So Laura is going to be on April 24th. And now these are limited tickets. So you can, and remember, each actor only does one night. They read the script, live in person. You watch them on Zoom. There's some kind of little bits of interaction or stuff. I don't know what it is. I didn't read it because I thought I might have to do it, but now that I don't, I might read it. So anyway, but there's some wonderful guests, amazing artists from all over the country. Really, you should watch all of them. Watch them all. It'll be so much fun.
I just want to say, when we first thought about doing this thing, it wasn't going to be a Juilliard reunion.
Yeah.
I just sent an email to my class members and said, hey, anybody want to do this?
Yeah.
And so many of them said yes.
I
And we were
know.
like, oh my gosh, well, let's make it a Group 19 Juilliard thing. So I'm grateful.
I
and
just
so
have to say
excited.
something about that I know we're talking too much and I just told him to be quiet. But what that does is it tells you something about this man, that these people would want to do this for him. He is an amazing human being. Houston is lucky to have him. I don't have to talk about how lucky I am to be married to him, but he's an amazing
Jeez.
person. And I am so grateful every day that he came into my life, but I'm more grateful as an artist when I watch what he does. I fell in love with him as an artist, and I was lucky enough to fall in love with him as a human being, but that this city has him, and obviously to watch his classmates just come out and just go, yes, yes, that fast, and people of the, that had the breadth of work of these people to come on and do this for him. It was really moving for me. So I hope you guys will join it. I hope you'll come watch them and celebrate Philip and these wonderful artists and an opportunity to see something live and exciting on a Zoom platform.
I think you're pretty swell too.
Oh, that's
In the
good.
interest of
Now we have one
wrapping
more
this
announcement.
up, I also would like to say, if you know anyone who is a high school student in Houston who is interested in taking part in our Summer Shakes program, our auditions are coming up on April 17th and 18th. I think there's a link. Oh, there it is down at the bottom of that's how
Yeah.
you can find out about this. We're bringing 2 Juilliard students who are students now down during the summer when they're not in school, and they're going to do a Shakespeare play, As You Like It, with 10 high school students. And so the auditions to be the
Yeah.
high school students are coming up. And so get the word out for that.
It's going to be
It's going
awesome.
to be awesome. It's our first year doing this.
Yeah.
And it's the beginning of something that I've been dreaming about and thinking about for a long time. And I think it's going to be something that will happen every year for hopefully a
Yeah.
long time after I'm gone, I hope.
Wow. That's all exciting. So we have a lot of cool stuff coming up. So thank you for always joining us for this wonderful interview series we do on Beyond the Fourth Wall. We love sharing time with our friends all over the city and around the country sometimes too. So have a beautiful evening. We're so happy you came and joined us, and hopefully we'll see you next week. We're coming back next week. All right. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Beyond the Fourth Wall is produced by Fourth Wall Theater Company, Houston's home for extraordinary performances up close. Each guest is paid for their appearance on this series, in accordance with our mission to pay artists a living wage. Follow the links in the video description to support Fourth Wall with a tax-deductible gift, or to subscribe to our upcoming 10th anniversary season.
Philip's playing with the dog right now. I don't know if you can see him. He's over there playing with our dog.
Yeah.
Go back. There he is. Hi. He'll be over in a minute.
I'll join you in a minute.
Yeah. So